What's up, everybody? This is Brad with the Mature Minded Gamers. We are a group of adult gamers who have jobs and lives, but also several passions like board gaming, Star Trek, and much more. You can check out our website, maturemindedgamers.com, where you'll find links to our YouTube channel, Twitch streams, and all of our podcasts. Today, we're bringing you another episode of our Star Trek podcast where we cover all things Trek. What's up, everybody? This is Brad with the Mature Minded Gamers, and we have an action-packed episode today for you. We are going to cover episodes 5 and 6 of Discovery, titled Choose Your Pain, and is it Lethe? Lethe? How do you pronounce that? Well, it doesn't matter. I've got my standard bridge crew with us today, Will and Eric.
Hey.
Hit it.
So to kick it off, we're going to start with episode 5, Choose Your Pain, and hold on to your butts, fellas. This is going to be a little bit of an adrenaline rush. We're going to meet a classic Trek character later in this episode, and man, there's a lot to process here. So we start off learning that the tardigrade that we met last episode turns out to be a pretty darn good navigator and is the key to using Discovery's spore drive and navigating through the mycelial network. But we also learned that all the jumps they've been making lately has really tuckered it out, and it's having a hard time doing much more. They find it being lethargic, and Burnham still kind of identifies with it and is pretty concerned about it. We find that Captain Lorca is off ship meeting with some of the Starfleet admirals about what's going to happen next. And he's being told to stay out of the front lines so that way they can study Discovery and replicate its technology across all of the Federation all of the fleet of ships. He's obviously not too happy about that and is trying to buck the system, but he's kind of going to get his way next because on his way back to Discovery after meeting with the admirals, his shuttle is like hijacked by a what looked to be a fairly large Klingon ship, and it doesn't take long before his shuttle captain is killed. He gets captured by the Klingons.
I remember this being the point where I thought this is how Burnham's going to be captain. Lorca's going to get captured. She's going to take control. But you know what? I'm really glad it didn't work out that way.
Yeah, me too. You know what? Because in this episode, we get to see Saru take kind of a charging lead of the ship, didn't we?
He sure did, and I didn't like it at first. But you know what? He's not a bad captain.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of this episode, you really kind of see that he's very capable. You know, it began to make me think in this episode, it really started me on the path to thinking about why didn't all of Starfleet ships have the spore drive? You know, I mean, it was kind of like this prominent way of travel, and this was kind of, to me, was also, it was both, I guess, the way where I started thinking about, why don't all ships, but then I kind of got to see, well, maybe this is why, with the Ripper having problems or whatever.
You start to see it unravel of why we've never heard of it until this point. Why isn't, like you said, why isn't every ship using it? And we didn't really know at this time what went wrong, but it's slowly showing it to us, right? Which is kind of cool.
Right.
Well, fellas, like the Showtime oven, but wait, there's more. So right after we learn about Saru looking for the captain, we see that Captain Lorca is thrown in prison with none other than Harry Mudd. Eric, I know you were stoked to hear this and you were stoked to see this. So what were your thoughts about Harry Mudd and Rainn Wilson?
Man, Rainn Wilson knocked it out of the park. I've been a huge fan of Harry Mudd's character from the original series, and I was super excited that he was coming back. And he has so much potential that was untapped in the original series, that I knew Rainn Wilson was going to do a great job. And you know what? It did not let me down one bit. And the way that, I mean, not to get too far ahead, but the way that it went down, you knew you're going to see more of him. And it just gets better and better, in my opinion.
I'm surprised to hear that you say he was one of your favorite characters from the original. I didn't like him in the original series. I didn't I guess, see him as this character that was going to be sticking around, or this arch nemesis or anything like that for protagonists for the future. But I really think that what Rainn Wilson did with this character really knocked it out of the park and solidified him as a potential threat, not only for what we see in this episode and the next episodes, but ongoing in maybe even to season 2, season 3, season 4, on and on.
Yeah, I thought he was great as Harry Mudd. I mean, he kind of redefined who I thought Harry Mudd was going to be. He did a great job of this. But I wanted to point out one thing that I think may be a little bit of a continuity error. So in episode 1, didn't Lorca have a tribble?
Yeah, I think it was mentioned, wasn't it, in this episode, something about a tribble?
I don't think it was about in this episode, but I thought it was episode 1, maybe episode 2. No, it wasn't episode 1. It would have been episode 2. We see Lorca kind of petting a tribble. And it's kind of just generally accepted that he's got a tribble and it's a pet. But didn't in the original series, Harry Mudd was the one to introduce tribbles to the Federation, because Kirk didn't know anything about them when they found them on Deep Space K9.
He definitely was, and I don't remember if Lorca had one or not. He might have, but like, so I mean, not to skip too far ahead, but we know where the Enterprise is from Discovery season 2. They haven't been in contact, so it's all plausible.
Okay, well, I'll accept that. So moving right along, in this set of scenes, we find out what the title of this episode means. Lorca is in a prison cell with Harry Mudd and another guy that seems to be in quite a lot of pain. And the Klingons rush in, look at Harry Mudd, and just say, "Choose your pain." And we find out that means that the prisoners that are in there must choose which one of them is going to get the crap kicked out of them. And Harry Mudd exclaims that the reason that is so that way they don't form any relationships in there. What'd you guys think of that?
I felt it was a very Klingon way to torture and to cause kind of animosity between prisoners.
Yeah, I agree. I liked it because I don't think, have we ever seen the Klingons hold prisoners like that?
We in the original series movies, when they were on Arapente, we kind of learned that the Klingons are pretty good about treating their prisoners.
Okay, well, I couldn't remember that, so I don't know. I like this, and it made sense. Like Will said, it's very Klingon.
Sure. So next up, we get to spend a little bit more time with Discovery's Dr. Hugh, and we find out that he shares in Michael's concerns about the tardigrade, and that he thinks that maybe they're overworking it. Stamets replies in a very Stamets way. He's still very snarky and doesn't agree. Kind of puts up a fight with Burnham and Hugh, and kind of almost puts Hugh back in his place. So Hugh takes off to do something that. I think they said an Andorian tonsillectomy or something like that, but it wasn't until after Stamets was like, "Don't you have somewhere else better to be?" So I don't know. Kind of getting the impression that there might be a little bit more between Stamets and Hugh, but we'll find that out later. So the scene changes again, and we're back to Lorca and in the Klingon prison, and we meet another Starship officer, Ash Tyler, who's also been there for quite a while, and they kind of form a bond pretty quickly. They kind of reminisce about different parts of the war, and Lorca challenges them on a couple of things, but I think they bro it up pretty quickly. And we also meet another kind of quirky character, Stuart. Do you guys remember who Stuart was?
The little creature, right?
Yep. All right, just checking. And along with Stuart, huh? What do you say?
I remember Harry Mudd saying something about Stewart, but I never saw anything. I don't remember. I don't
The little
remember.
scorpion-looking thing that scurried across and gave him a cracker.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Well, that was just a little quip in there, but along with that, we get Stewart on Harry Mudd's shoulder as he is basically proclaiming his disdain for Starfleet and the reason why he doesn't like Starfleet. So snap again, we're back on to the Discovery, and Stamets is hitting us with what I think is probably some of the least believable technobabble in the majority of Star Trek. He's talking about how the tardigrade is able to navigate the mycelial network and how the mycelial network permeates the entire galaxy, and it's related to the fungi, and it travels through a layer that's between space and subspace. And I don't know, man. I've watched a lot of Star Trek, and I understand that this is in the future and this is kind of a Star Trek-y thing, but this is probably the least believable thing about Star Trek Discovery is their description of what this mycelial network is. And kind of another little sub point there. This is also, I think, the first 2 F-bombs we ever get in Star Trek in this scene as well.
Man,
so what do you guys think of that?
Dude, okay, so half the stuff that Geordi LaForge spouts off is techno babble that makes absolutely no sense anyway. So I didn't really see it as any different hearing him talking about a network that binds the galaxy together. It's like, metachlorians in Star Wars. So I mean, it is what it is. It was just a way that they could explain and give some when people think about like networks and stuff, how it ties things together. I mean, most people have an understanding of that. And it was a way that they could use examples so, your average person would still be able to understand what's going on. And I think they did a good job with it, even though, yes, half the stuff that they talk about is make up, make believe, So I think they did a pretty good job with it.
I
Didn't bother me at all.
I absolutely hate the whole mycelial network stuff and the whole spore drive stuff. I didn't like it at all. However, I do believe there's a lot of stuff we still don't understand. So I'm okay with it. Like I knew what they were trying to do, but I agree. Like the whole fungi thing and like, I don't know. Like I'm in between.
Do you think they were trying to like how it makes sense for like string theory, how everything is tied together with little strings and how that could be like the network they were talking about? So I mean, in a way it could be fathomable.
I do.
Yeah, but they literally said that the entire mycelial network is built up of like particles of fungi. So we're saying that all of the galaxy is stitched together by fungi.
I mean,
hey, I'm a fun guy.
Well, here's the thing. We don't.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
so right now we think that's what black matter is, right? We don't know what black matter is made of. I solely believe there's multiple dimensions that we can't see or we comprehend. So who knows? Maybe it is fungi, Brad. Maybe fungus is watching over us right now.
Well, I don't know who that Gus is, but I don't want fun Gus looking over me. But it's.
I always thought you were a fun guy. I guess not.
Yeah, well, Will just made that one a second ago, so you get 0 points.
I missed that. Sorry, Will.
Yeah, nobody listens to me anyway. It's all right.
What'd you say?
Moving right along.
So
all right, moving right along.
Wait, hold on. Don't move along too far. I want to get back to the F bombs.
Okay.
We talked about this a lot in Picard when they said the F bomb.
Yeah.
And I was very much on I'm fine with it. This is the new style of Trek, and Discovery was before Picard, and I was in the same boat. And I know that's a lot of Trek fans hated it. Oh my gosh, you don't cuss in Star Trek. Get with the times, people. That's all I gotta say. It was fine. It was dumb, which most cuss words are, but you say stuff like that in the heat of passion. I mean, and that's what they were trying to convey. So I get it. I'm fine with it.
Okay. So, for those of you listening, we had a fairly lengthy conversation off mic on this stuff, and I was not a fan of it in Picard, and I, however, think that it was more justified in this scene in Discovery than it was in every instance of it in Picard.
But never did Picard say it.
No, he didn't. But it was in the. I mean, but in all the places in the entire series of Picard, it felt more forced than it did in this episode. This was Tilly being emotion, or not emotionally, but she was being energetic and caught up in the moment. Like, I get that, and I understand the slip there, and then I understand Stamets repeating it back, like, this is effing cool. You know what I mean? Like, that made more sense to me than every instance that it was said in Picard.
So let me ask you guys something though, and when it comes to the language in both of these, Picard as well as Discovery. So I mean, growing up, we watched The Next Generation. It was on primetime television, and you would be sitting around with the family, either eating dinner or eating your popcorn, watching TV, and this was the kind of like the center. And do you guys feel like Discovery and Picard, do you feel like they are family oriented, like what we used to watch with The Next Generation and Voyager and those kind of things?
I watched them with my girls, and I have no problem.
Well, I don't think that that's the question that Will's asking. He's not asking whether or not we would watch. It's would we classify this as a family friendly show? Um,
Because there's a lot more besides language in both of these shows that has to do with alcohol and drug abuse and
Rape gangs.
violence,
rape.
and
All that stuff. Way more violence and gore, and just a lot more adult themes. Now, The Next Generation had it, but it was also a little bit more
tame.
tame and whimsical, if you will. And to
Well,
me, that's well in 80s
okay.
reference. So when you think about that, though, that was more of like a family wholesome like television, right? Now I don't really see
No,
this.
You're wrong.
I don't really see this show being something that you would have young children just sit around. All of you guys sit around a TV and watch for other reasons besides just the language. I don't really think this is more marketed or geared towards the family as opposed to older adults.
I don't think the original Star Trek was geared towards the family either. You are just seeing a 30-year gap. That's all you're seeing of how we've evolved as a society. If that's good or bad, I mean, that who's to say? But
Well,
if you
that's
turn it,
also not, that's not for our show to comment on, but go ahead. I
right.
didn't mean to interrupt you there.
I mean, I was just going to say, just look at the news. Just look how it's changed. I mean, I remember watching news with my mom, and it was never talking about all the murders and violence. Now, is that because the news has changed? Society changed? Are they willing to report on more gruesome stuff now than what they used to be? Maybe. I mean,
Well, it's not willing to it, but well, okay. So we're getting into a whole lot of political and cultural commentary here, yeah, I mean, like news media knows that kind of thing sells, and so even when it comes to Trek and this stuff, like they know that they have to carry over some of that into this and into some of the primetime shows. That's why, like, on every new series of something you watch on well, any network, cable or even like subscribed shows or whatever, it's always more um, there's always more skin and more violence and more nudity and whatnot in the very first episode of most shows to get that person to watch it. And I mean, I think this is not immune to that, but I don't know. I think it. Yeah, I don't know. I'll leave it there.
Answer my question, Brad.
I don't. I would not consider the Discovery or Picard as being a family show. No,
Or a primetime television show.
Or a primetime television show. These shows, in my opinion, are for Trek initiated. Like, meaning that
If you were a new Trek fan, you wouldn't be starting here.
if I were a new Trek fan with no Trek friends, this isn't where I would start. If I had a buddy that was into Trek but I had never been through it before, I might watch it with him.
Okay,
If
so
I were
this
going to introduce my kids or someone else's kids or any kids to Trek, this isn't where I'd start.
okay, so this brings me back circle around to my whole point. Do you guys feel that we will get another show on primetime CBS television that is more family friendly?
You mean a Trek show?
Yes.
No.
You think it's all just going to be a CBS All Access?
Well, yeah, that's how TV's going to go from now on. But this is prime time for them.
Sure. Okay.
So
Yeah.
wait, real quick, name one show on prime time that you would let your kids watch.
Oh, I have no idea. I don't have cable.
There's none. Everything is adult oriented now.
But well, that's also where things have changed a little bit too. To continue on with the social commentary, is that like what is prime time now is not like that Friday night between 7 and 9 p.m. Like prime time now is whatever is highlighted on Netflix or Hulu or CBS or whatever. It's whatever is promoted the most, and I think that you can go and make whatever you want prime time. I don't know that that's as big a thing. I mean, shoot, the last handful of weeks, the biggest thing on television has been Tiger King. So, I mean, it's not like we can, say that even the majority of people know what they're watching.
It's just TV has changed. And I feel like this is in the same position the Next Generation was. I mean,
Fair enough. Fair
No,
enough. Fair enough.
I don't agree with that at all.
Let's keep moving.
Well, I think TV was safer 30 years ago than it is now. But now, if you put a show on TV that's boring, like the Next Generation, it's not going to do very well. Like you got it. This is how society has changed.
Do you think if the Next Generation was airing live now, that this would not be the same kind? I mean, with better graphics and whatever, same stories, same premises. Do you not feel like it would be as popular as it? You think it was just because of when it was made? You don't think it would be just as popular now?
Well, no, I think okay. So there's two things that's missing from Trek right now that would have kept it more in line with Next Generation. The two things are Gene Roddenberry, who had a more utopian feel for the future and a more evolved feeling for what the future was going to hold for us. And two, a lot of what Star Trek, the Next Generation, and even the original series to some degree did play on a lot more of the social issues of the time. Whether it was drugs or racism or classism or things like that. There was a lot more of that involved in those shows that we don't find in today's Trek. Like there's not an underlying lesson in Discovery or Picard. It is what it is. It's a story, and I think maybe that's what's different now too.
Well, it's definitely different. I mean, look at Discovery. You guys, or not Discovery? Sorry, Deep Space Nine. It's the story-driven Trek that you guys love.
Oh yeah, but even that had a lot of like social commentary through it. I mean, the whole thing was there was a black captain, and the way that he operated his crew was a lot different. And in almost every single season, there was something to do with. I mean, they were addressing racism left and right in that show.
I mean, they were doing that in the original series, though.
Well, I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like Discovery and Picard don't have that underlying social cause as a common thread through it, where it did have it in Deep Space Nine, and it did have several instances of it in Next Generation, and there was that in the original series.
That's because our society has changed and hopefully evolved. I mean, sure, we still have racism and stuff, but I would like to think it's not at the degree that it was back then.
Oh, well, that's a whole different podcast. So I'm gonna get us back on track before we go too far deep into until this isn't a Star Trek podcast anymore. So let me find out my notes where we were at. We just had the F-bomb. Gotcha. Okay. So snap back to Lorca and
So I want to
the
go back to
Klingon-
the F-bomb. I'm just
Jiminy
kidding. I'm
Christmas.
just kidding.
Okay. All right. So no, we're on the Klingon ship again. We got Lorca. He's getting ready to be tortured by L'Rell. And kind of seems like she's putting on a little bit more than the torture moves on him, maybe trying to uh, be a little bit flirty with him, but I don't know. I'm gonna breeze through most of that though, and flip right back to Discovery, where Burnham gets burned pretty bad by Saru, calls her a predator, and that he doesn't believe that he believes she's dangerous. Um, which dang, like after that whole thing, I felt bad for Burnham after Saru basically laid it down on her because he even said that, um, or he even tried to imply again that it was her fault that the Shinzao fell and that Giorgio died. Did you guys pick up anything through this set of scenes?
I'll definitely can still feel the hate. Like they've been riding that for a while, the last few episodes. Saru's hate for her and dislike and not trusting, and they're just still continuing it on, which I liked at the time.
Right, it made sense. I mean,
Sure.
your captain just went down. You just, went down a couple years ago, however long, it had been
6 months.
6 months, and the person responsible was now aboard your ship, and it's not like you could just like kick her out and say, "Hey, you go walking down the street." No, I mean, she's on the ship with you.
I mean, you got Saru who's playing lawful good versus Vernon versus
Chaotic good.
what?
Burnham.
Burnham versus Burnham, who's at
Chaotic
best chaotic good.
Right.
That's a little D&D humor for you fellas there.
Well, we nerd out on many things, not just Star Trek.
Yeah, I know. So we're going to change perspectives yet again, and I'll admit that I'm getting a little whiplash as quickly as we're going back and forth between these two scenes. So we are back with the Klingons in prison again, and we learn that Stewart is a traitor. He's been basically reporting everything that has been discussed in the prison scenes with the Klingons, and Lorca figures it out. So it's also during this scene that Ash realizes that he's been played by Mudd, and we don't spend much time there before we flash back again to Discovery, where Saru is still being the big bad captain, and he's decided how they're going to search for Lorca, that they're going to use the spore drive, whether it's going to hurt the tardigrade or not, and it's going to be his way or the highway. And then we again snap back to the Klingons, where the Klingons pop into the jail cell and force Lorca to choose his pain again. And after a small conversation back and forth, they choose Ash, which kind of kicks off their escape plan.
Okay, so can I talk about something real quick with Ash and Lorca's kind of relationship? Yeah. So, a question for you guys: like, how did they, if they obviously had been spied upon or whatever, how did they formulate this strategy to break free here?
Well,
I mean, is it just Starfleet training? Say, oh, if we have an opportunity, we're gonna fight.
I'm sure that's part of it.
Yeah, but how does he even trust Ash?
Well, here that was another thing too. I didn't trust Ash at all. Still at this point, right. I remember. I don't think I ever trusted him until maybe like a couple episodes later, and then all hell.
Yeah, don't. Spoilers, everybody.
Yeah, I didn't trust Ash either, and I remember watching through live the first time, and Eric and I going back and forth on whether or not Ash was a double agent or whether or not he was. It just seemed really fishy that everything was kind of falling their way once Ash kind of joined in. So I agree with you, Will. Like, I don't know how they would have had the opportunity to do that, because we also learned in this scene that Harry Mudd wasn't included in any of the planning, and he was surprised that he was going to be left behind. So they had to have done it in a way that in that small 3-person cell that Harry didn't hear about it.
I think one of them's Beta Z.
No.
Negative, but so you knowing both the characters, If me and you were in a cell, if me and you were in the cell and we didn't trust a third person, you don't think me and you could work out together without talking about what we're going to do?
Well, I understand as far as like the whole opportunity thing.
I'll
and
answer
they're
that. No, I don't think you two could.
that they're both Starfleet and they both have the same training, and I get that. The problem that I have with it is it just seemed too coordinated, like Brad was getting to at the end there. My whole, I guess, point was they just automatically weren't going to try to save Mud. And the thing is with Starfleet, you try to save everyone no matter what they did to you. And what I don't understand is why they just let Harry Mudd stay there knowing he's going to get tortured.
Well, but I think they think that okay, so back it up. Lorca had the comment earlier in this episode that he noticed that Mud is free of bruises and whatnot, like insinuating that he's found his way to not get the beaten while they're in prison. And they found out that his little sidekick Stewart is the mole in the whole operation there. So I think that uh, Ash thinks it now too, but Lorca's kind of insinuated that Ash is, or that Mud is siding with the Klingons.
Okay.
But I mean, that doesn't excuse the fact that they were able to come up with this whole strategy without him knowing what.
I'm telling you,
short amount of time.
I'm telling you, Brett. Even me and you could work this out.
I'm not too sure. I'm pretty slow when it comes.
I would give you a look next time. How many times have we played board games together?
I want to see this look.
I give you a look. You would know.
I want to look for it too, because we've played enough board games together that you've probably given me that look when we played Star Trek Ascendancy a couple of times. Well, that one time we played, and I was just like, "Derp, what?"
That's a good point. Will, me and you could work this out.
Yeah, maybe.
Brad basically is our Harry Mudd.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So when we played Between Two Castles, who had the high? Oh wait, that's
because we carried you, and you were the guy in between.
Yeah, you had the low high score.
Shut up. Okay, moving on. Let's see. So moving on, we are snapping back again to the Discovery, and we find that they appear in the ta-da nick of time for them to save the day and save Lorca and Ash from being overtaken by some Klingon raiders. We also learn that the last jump that they made in here, that Stamets was playing the role of the tardigrade, and that he had injected himself with tardigrade DNA to be able to act as a navigator on here. Were you guys surprised by that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't really understand it, and I still don't. But I mean, okay.
So, I mean, would you? So, last resort, you're the engineer coming up with this whole hypothesis for this type of travel. You're the smartest guy in the room. Is it really going to be you that injects yourself with this?
How many scientists have done this to themselves, though? I mean, history has proven that. How many scientists have experimented on themselves and killed themselves? Like, that's a very common thing. So that's why I guess that's why I was okay with it. Like, okay. Like it's far fetched. I don't like I said, I don't like the whole network thing. I don't like the sport thing. However, let's just get it wrapped up.
So smart, they're stupid.
Well, you worked your whole life for this. You want to prove it's right. But anyways,
it's just your faith. You believe in it.
Well, this is starting to show us how we've never heard of this before. How it's going to wrap up.
Yep.
You can't. Yep. So.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to punch you on that one because I want to punt at you on that one. I want to talk about that in a later episode. So, we're going to start to land the plane on this episode. So as we wrap this up, the writers of this episode try to hit us with the rest of the feels, and we get a heart-to-heart between Saru and Burnham where they talk about, she asks him, "Do you really think I'm dangerous?" And he basically says no. And they kind of make up. Tilly and Burnham release the tardigrade with an injection of the spores, or with a surrounding of spores, and it launches off across the mycelial network to wherever it goes. And then we also learn why Hugh and Stamets are probably concerned one another, learning that they're married to one another. And we also
Okay.
find out that what?
You're going way too fast. A couple things I want to talk about.
Okay.
All right, so let's go back to the point when Saru and Burnham are talking, and they have that kind of makeup session or whatever of, oh, I don't think you're dangerous. Not 20, 30 minutes earlier in the episode, he's telling her that, oh, she's dangerous. I will do everything I can to protect my captain. And this captain gets captured.
Well, yeah.
So, well, right. But
it
then,
wasn't
hold on.
personal.
Well, it doesn't matter. He didn't do everything he could to protect him if his captain got captured. So, but then, not later in the episode, he's like, "Oh, you're fine. No, I was just joking, I guess. But I was super serial about it."
I think there was a heat of the moment where he was captain, or he was in charge, and he was just doing whatever he could to keep it together. And so he was portraying and projecting being a lot more confident and being in charge than he really was. And I think that just spilled off on maybe whatever the Kelpian version of an adrenaline rush is.
Nailed it.
I think you're just reaching for the stars on that one.
No, how many times have you been in a fight with somebody and said something you didn't really mean? Or after you cool down, you're like, I was wrong, I'm sorry.
Almost every conversation I have with you, Eric.
Right, exactly.
Well, and I guess, but I don't know. It seemed out of place that in the same episode. Now, if they would have maybe had a second episode, like the next episode, maybe something happened where Burnham more proved herself as opposed to just caring about the Ripper. I could see that how his mindset would change. But it just seemed like a little too convenient at the end of this one. Too quick of a resolution.
Okay. Well, speaking of things that were maybe a little off, we find out that Stamets is no longer attached to his reflection. So what did you guys think about that?
I do remember us having a talk about it. I'm like, what did that mean? Because we had no idea at the time, and I still have no idea.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. And does that mean that there's, it's a mirror? Is something wrong with like the mirror itself, or is it maybe just an illusion of things to come?
Yeah, so I truly have no idea. I definitely leading anyone anywhere with that question, because even after seeing all of Discovery and this being at least my second, maybe third lap through this episode, I still don't understand what they were trying to communicate there at all. Like, we'll talk about it again later on, but I don't think that coupled into anything that happens this point going forward.
So, like you said, later on we get a little more clues of what may have been going on, but they never really tell you. So yeah, at this point we had no clue. Like, it didn't make any sense at all.
Well, any other final thoughts about this episode?
Loved Rainn Wilson. I liked the great escape at the end. I was pretty happy with this episode overall. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, it was more action packed than it seemed to start off with, and the prison breakout was fun and engaging to watch. I'd like to see a little bit more of how they got to the shuttle or whatever, but other than that, it was pretty decent.
This to me is a classic episode that they wrote 2 hours of content and decided they only had 45 minutes to put it on.
Yeah, I can see that.
So it was a whole lot of stuff on there, and we went back and forth way too much. This could have been a 2 hour, mid-season, not a mid-season. This should have been a 2 hour special, honestly.
Well, either that or the editing, if they wouldn't have jumped back and forth so many times, would have made it easier to follow.
Or a to be continued.
Do you think they escaped a little too easy?
Well,
yes.
Yes. but don't get too far ahead of yourself there.
Well, I remember us talking about that at the end of this episode. Like, did they let them get out? And I'm pretty sure we both thought they did. Right?
Yeah, and the
Easy,
only
you
thing
call that easy?
Huh?
I said easy. You call that easy? They're tracking us. Not this ship, sister. Oh, sorry, a little Star Wars quote in there.
Yeah, the wrong genre.
Oh, my bad.
Okay, so this next episode, pronounced Lethe, Lethe. What did we decide that was? Lethe?
Lethe.
Lethe.
Episode
Loki.
6, Lethe. This one isn't nearly as action-packed, but we start this episode with Sarek on a Vulcan ship with some guy we've never met before, but turns out he is a Vulcan extremist that believes that the Vulcan interest in the humans and Starfleet is just is irrelevant and is not a logical sort of. I don't remember how they put it, but basically they're totally against working with humans in Starfleet. So it seems to me they are a little xenophobic, maybe. But we also find out that Michael Burnham is trying to kill Tilly by making her work out and to try to get 6 seconds off her timed run, so that way she can become captain someday. And we also find that Lorca and Tyler have found some time to bro it out on some sort of training simulation. Afterwards, Ash has been invited to become a permanent member of the crew, and yeah, it seems like they're going to be buddy-buddy.
I thought that was a little bit crazy.
Huh?
I thought it was crazy how he asked him to be his security officer.
You thought that was more crazy than him promoting Michael Burnham to a science officer on the bridge?
I didn't think it was more crazy than her being a science officer. This guy, this Lorca is just nuts. I still don't know what I think about him.
Well, he is nuts. That's what they're getting at. But yes, you're starting to see how much he's willing to play off the cuff and just roll with it. And he just lost his security officer, that damn tardigrade. So what's he gonna do?
Yeah, but what makes him think that Ash, because they escaped a prison ship or whatever from the Klingons, that he is his best security choice?
Well, I mean, they did plan an entire escape plan without having to talk or interact with one another at all. So I mean, that's a pretty good security dude.
Really? Just means he's good with a blaster and good in a fight. Doesn't mean he's good at security.
That's everything about security. Would you rather have Worf who gets his ass beat by everybody,
or Tash Yar who doesn't?
Yeah, neither one actually. Give me Data as security officer. You can give me security breaches and stuff.
Well, anyway,
he can do both at the same time.
It's not like Tyler's not Starfleet already. I mean, he's Starfleet. Like, he's an officer. Like, it's the perfect fit. I mean,
but he could have been a mess hall officer, for crying out loud.
Could have been, but he told Lorca what his role was on the. I can't remember what ship he was on, but he told him what his role was.
I mean, he's no Neelix, but whatever. You roll with what you got.
I mean, I guess, but I mean, if he wants the best of the best around him, I don't understand why having someone who is captured and imprisoned and tortured is the best choice to be your security officer. That's just me.
Yep. I get you. I would rather have a mutineer that caused a war and has been sentenced to life in prison as a bridge officer as well.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying either one of them are good choices. But what I'm getting at is you could just definitely sell that Lorca is off the rails.
Off his rocker? Yeah.
Right.
For sure. Okay. So since we are agreeing that Lorca has probably got a screw loose or two, we find Michael Burnham is in another one of these long distance phone call mind melds again, and is aware of the trouble that Sarek's in. And after she gets knocked out cold and is in a dream sequence where she's seeing kind of things through the perspective of Sarek's mind, she wakes up and sort of springs into action that they need to go and save Sarek. Um, so you know, I don't want to keep stopping for minor plot points here, but this whole long distance mind meld thing is another one of those things that just doesn't feel right, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't really I didn't think so much of it the first time we watched through this show, but now that I'm seeing it again, this is the second time in so many episodes that we've seen sort of this non-touch sort of mind meld kind of thing going on, and I'm not sure I like it.
So I'm fine with this. Sarek is the most powerful Vulcan we've ever met in our entire lives. And this is his daughter that he has raised as a Vulcan.
Human daughter.
Human daughter that he's raised as a Vulcan. I'm fine with it.
But he never ever 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 once did any of that with Spock, who is half Vulcan.
Right, but there's a huge reason him and Sarek, and I mean this is even talked about in the original series and the Next Generation, that they don't really get along. They don't really see eye to eye. So I can understand that they wouldn't communicate this way.
Okay.
I'm fine with it. I like it.
I mean, it is what it is. It's kind of like a not telekinesis.
Telekinetic, no, telepathic.
Yeah, it's almost like telepathy, and it's just, you know, it's a suit. Their superpowers now. You know, he's a mutant, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. It's just kind of one of those things. It's like, well, how come the Romulans never communicated this way if they're related?
But well, okay. So the Vulcan.
It's like they just introduced abilities that the Vulcans could do. Is all I'm getting at, and it just kind of seemed as a plot driver, but still out of place.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Okay. So after after that sequence there, Ash, Tilly, and Burnham, they set off on their rescue mission to get Sarek, and we don't really see a whole lot more about that other than the fact that they leave. But we do find that Lorca is kind of getting his hand slapped by Admiral What's Her Face, and
Whoa!
that she's
Cornwell is one
what?
of my favorite additions.
She's pretty awesome.
You don't call her Admiral What's Her Name? What the? All right, member number 3. Continue on.
Okay, so Admiral What's Her Face.
You just got demoted.
Is slapping Lorca on the wrist for letting Burnham and Ash take off on a rescue mission. She's got just as much doubt as we do with Ash being a security officer, and she lets Lorca know that. But something else, just a little bit more seems to be going on. It seems to be a little bit more personal for her. Maybe there's a relationship going on here with Lorca. Spoiler alert, there is. We'll talk about it. And we find in the sequence here that Burnham's getting a little bit more into Sarek's thought process, that she's starting to see some of his subconscious thoughts, and we find that maybe one of his biggest regrets right now is that he is in a meeting with the I don't know, the higher ups at the Vulcan Expeditionary Force, and we find that Michael Burnham actually was accepted into the Expeditionary Force, but she was sort of let go from that because Sarek was given the option between having her be able to join it or her half human, half Vulcan son Spock. So because Spock, you know, existed, she wasn't allowed to join the Expeditionary Force. So, what did you guys think about that?
So 2 things have happened here. One, we learned that the Vulcans have rebels that blow, you know, that you don't assume are part of Vulcan. You assume everybody's logical and everybody listens and they're all united and whatever. And that's not the case. I think this is, you know, a really cool moment seeing the one Vulcan. Number one, the way he blew himself up with the whatever it was pretty cool. And number 2, we're seeing that basically what happened, like you said, the backstory that Sarek, who's not supposed to be emotional, is kind of showing some emotion here, having to make a very tough decision, and the impact that it has on Burnham.
think this might be the first time that we actually hear on screen that Spock is her half brother, or Spock is her adopted brother.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess if you didn't know who Sarek was, yes.
Well, so we're going to fast forward a little bit. I mean, there's some things that happen, but we're going to fast forward through the episode. Michael Burnham's able to save Sarek through more of these long distance mind melds, or soul sharing, I think is what they called it there. And she brings him back to Discovery, where Lorca has kind of done the deed with the Admiral and has sort of revealed himself in a way that she decides that he's not the right captain for the Discovery. He spends some time pleading his case.
Let's talk about what happened. I mean, so she wakes him up, and then all of a sudden he just like goes crazy with the phaser under his pillow kind of thing. Now the question is, how did she not realize that phaser was under the pillow? Things probably didn't get as crazy as we think.
I mean, do you check under Stacy's pillow?
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
I don't get shot in the back of my head when I'm sleeping.
I mean, I've never been one of these people to sleep with people, whatever you want to call it. What's that app called people use? The dating app?
Tinder?
Yeah, I've never been one of these Tinder people, obviously, but I don't think one of my steps would be to check under the person I'm sleeping with pillow.
I don't think that the Admiral would just swiped left or right or whatever it is for Tinder for Lorca. I think this is obviously a relationship that's been ongoing for a while now.
Well, obviously it's not called Tinder. It's called like Trekker or something. I mean,
it's gosh. Anyway,
things are different.
This is the future.
Moving on. So Lorca kind of pleads his case on why he shouldn't lose his ship. And through his sweet talking, we find that he's actually not going to lose his ship. But he does feel confident enough that he's going to promote Michael to officially be on the bridge crew, as I had alluded to earlier. Admiral What's-Her-Face then leaves Discovery on a shuttle to meet with the Klingons, and it goes about as well as we probably would have guessed it would have. Did you guys see that coming?
Well, kind of, and the reason why I did is because when she was leaving, she was like, "Oh, when I get back, we will talk about, you still having the ship or whatever." So you kind of knew something was going to go down.
Well, I remember talking to you, Brad, about it, and I was like he did that on purpose. Like that was a setup, right? Like Lorca knew.
I remember not thinking that was a setup. I did not think that she was going to go meet with the Klingons, and her entire security crew got killed and she got kidnapped. Like that was a bit of a
At the very end of the episode, though, when he hears what happens, he's like
we're not going to go after her.
Well, yeah, and he's like, yeah, I kind of knew that was happening. It was a look on his face, like like he wasn't really surprised.
Yeah, but I still don't think he would have had to have been colluding with the Klingons. I didn't at this point think that he was colluding with them. I did think that there was something going on, but I didn't think that it was Lorca quite yet. I still think at this point I've got my money on Ash being the person. I think I even remember saying that back then, that I thought that Ash was the way that the reason the Klingons knew that was going.
Yeah, I could see that. Ash is kind of shady, but he's a security officer. He has the information. He has the ability to get any of that intel.
Yep, he's the security officer. We're going to go full circle with this episode here, aren't we? So the last thing that I really want to point out with this episode is that we get a glimpse into what might be a budding relationship between Ash and Burnham as they talk on the mess hall there. And I think that there might not have been as much to glean past that point throughout the rest of the episode. Did you guys pick up on anything else that maybe I missed?
Well, I do want to go back to the point where you thought it was weird that Sarek was able to communicate with Burnham. But if you remember, she got severely injured and he had to give her some of his, what is it called, Katra or whatever. That's why they're linked.
I forgot about that.
That's why they're linked, and that's why it all made sense when we watched it. I remember
Wait,
now.
can you explain that a little bit?
So doesn't Spock give his contra to Kirk
To Bones at the
or
to
Bones?
Bones
Yeah,
at
okay.
the end of Wrath of Khan, when he does the mind meld thing, he like sort of installs his consciousness into Bones' brain, and then all of Search for Spock is them going back to Vulcan and getting that sort of reinstalled.
Right. And I couldn't remember how all the pieces played out. And then I was looking, and that's what happened is when the not actually Klingons, but the rebel Vulcans bombed Burnham or killed Burnham's family or whatever. Sarek is the one that saved Burnham by putting his contra into her. And that's why they're linked. They make sense now.
Okay. All right, I'll give you that one. Now I'm a lot less skeptical about this. But I mean, I guess the problem with it isn't necessarily that it's a thing, but it's like now we're overusing it. We've got all this background history of Trek, and we've never once seen a Vulcan do a long distance phone call like this. You know what I mean? Like it. You'd think that this type of thing would be something that would be reserved for an actual empath or a telepath, like a true full-blooded Beta Z, or what's there was that I can't remember the species in Next Generation that were almost completely empathic, that they barely ever talked, and
Well, little robot people, or they weren't robots.
No, not the robot people.
They were fixing the space station.
Huh?
Right. They were fixing the space station, and they tried to set it to blow up or whatever. Because they were trying.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point being is that this seems like a little bit further of a stretch on the whole Vulcan telepathic ability than what we've been led to believe up till now.
However, it is perfectly possible. We all know that Sarek was like the most powerful, or the most powerful Vulcan or whatever, or was like the best ambassador, right? He was a very good negotiator. Do you think that it's possible that he had some telepathic abilities? And that's why he was so good at what he did?
No, well, okay. So it is little known or little hidden. It's not very well hidden that the Vulcans are, telepathic to a degree. So that's not that I'm not disputing that part. It's just, I mean, because that's essentially what a mind meld is. It's telepathy by touch. But that's the thing that I think the only other time that we've ever encountered something that wasn't a touch-based telepathy with the Vulcans was when it was a series of episodes on Next Generation, or maybe just one episode where they had some rogue Vulcan that was trying to create this like telepathic weapon thing. Maybe it wasn't Next Generation. Now that I'm talking, it might have been Deep Space Nine, but they were trying to create this telepathic weapon from back in Vulcan past, and that was like the only non-touch based telepathy that I think that we've seen up until now.
Right, but would you want to watch a new Star Trek show that they didn't kind of introduce something a little bit new to give it like kind of like a fresh feel? I mean, do you feel like we'd be
just stuff new here though? But this is a prequel. Like that's where I don't really dig the giving us new stuff, because this is a prequel.
Yeah, but this is, like, as Eric keeps saying, this is new. I mean, it was 30 years ago that we, or however long it's been since we've seen New Trek. So, I mean, they've got to kind of mix it up a little bit. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't like what Abrams did with Star Trek, but I mean, at least he made some fresh choices so we're not watching the same thing. We're kind of watching a different take on it. I think that's pretty cool. I don't mind it at all. I mean, I know but I'm also not the diehard Trek fan like you guys are, where everything's canon and we can't change it, or else it's not real Star Trek. Well, it's just a show.
I've never been that way. I'm all for change. I just love new Trek. It can be
right.
I mean, as long as it's not bad, but I don't mind the cussing and stuff like that.
So you bring cussing back up. Okay.
Give us more DS9.
I think this is about the time where we're going to go ahead and wrap this episode up. So, yeah, go ahead and take it away, Eric.
So then I'm going to give a prediction real quick because we talked about this at the end of Picard when Discovery Season 3 was going to start.
Uh-huh.
Well, I went to cancel my CBS All Access and because, no track right now. And they have a promotion running until actually today it ends where you get it for free, right? I'm thinking we're going to hear about Discovery starting tomorrow. I mean, not actually watching it tomorrow, but we're going to hear a hard start date tomorrow. And I think it's going to be probably May. I'm going to say we're going to get to watch Discovery Season 3 middle of May.
Tomorrow being April 24th.
Correct. Thank you for everybody who's, not with us live, which is no one. So anyways, as Brad said, I'm going to lead you out tonight. Make sure you check out all of our content on our website, maturemindedgamers.com. We do video games, board games, and much more. Thanks for listening, everybody. And most importantly, keep yourself safe and have a great day.